Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and have you guys seen the previews for Future State Superman Worlds of War? It looks amazing, right? It's written by Becky Clownhunter. It basically looks like Superman, like Planet Hulk with Superman, but it looks cool. Like, I'm super excited to check it out. But I just happened to think about that. So we are covering the origin of Clownhunter, which is something that a lot of you guys have asked for. And it's actually very fortuitous we waited until now, because I didn't realize DC was going to be releasing a one-shot origin of Clownhunter, which I would have known had I just looked it up. But it's cool, right? We've got this now. This is the full-on origin of his character, because in a lot of ways, we didn't really know what all went into his character development. We simply just knew that he became Clownhunter because his parents were killed during, or at least at some point, by the Joker, right? So this gives us the full-on origin, which I'm excited to cover. So here's the thing. This initially opens up really with Leslie Tompkins and Crime Alley, right? Now, Leslie Tompkins, for those of you guys who don't know, she's kind of like the night nurse of DC Comics, right? She's been around for a really, really long time, but she's the one who kind of runs this free clinic down in Crime Alley in order to serve those individuals who are underprivileged, right? Whether they're vigilantes or sometimes even criminals, or people who can't afford to go to like a hospital because they don't have health insurance or something like that. She basically tends to their injuries and their wounds and so on. And so because of that, she's very much a respected member of the community. And this really is really kind of reflected when you have this guy who shows up out of nowhere looking to rob her, right? Like to literally like rob a woman who runs a free clinic in Crime Alley, right? Now this guy Big Eddie kind of shows up and is like, look, like this is Leslie Tompkins that you're robbing, so like I'm gonna break you apart piece by piece if you don't get out of here. The robber ultimately leaves, right? But the important thing behind this is that once Leslie gets to her clinic, she's met by the arrival of Clownhunter, right? By Bao, I think is how you pronounce his name. But the whole point behind this, and the reason why this matters, is because he comes in there really kind of having his injuries tended to after he left, right? In the last Batman story arc that we covered where he almost killed Harley, and that's kind of what he says, right? She's like, why are you here now, right? Like why come to this place now? And the reality is he's experiencing an existential crisis. And the reason for that is we jump back to 3 years prior, and you've got him just kind of in his bedroom playing video games. His mom kind of gets pissed and says, look, either you could have helped me downstairs, right? Or you can help me around the house. And her whole stance is like, I gave you a choice, right? Either you could clean up your room or you could help your father downstairs get ready for the dinner rush, right? And he's like, there were only 2 people in the restaurant yesterday. What kind of a dinner rush is there really? But, ultimately his mom's just, his mom does what moms do, which is like, I brought you into this world and I will take you out. So ultimately, of course, he ends up going downstairs and helping his dad. Enter Harley Quinn. And Harley Quinn, of course, shows up with her 2 hyenas. Now, given the way she's dressed and so on, this is, relatively soon to when she ended up leaving Joker, or at least sometime around relatively soon. One thing to keep in mind when it comes to comics, they don't usually keep track of real world events, right, of real world time. And so while it's technically 3 years ago, this could have been, 20 years ago or 10 years ago in comic book time, right? So it's one of those weird kind of funky things where it's like, it's just at some point along the line with Harley Quinn, right? But when she shows up here, she's kind of like, so Mr. J, the Joker, like we literally just got done knocking over a whole bunch of jewelry stores in the Diamond District, and we're hungry. So I told him that, I used to have pho all the time when I was younger, when I was in college. And so he wants to come here and try some, right? So, the Joker comes walking in, he's like, we'll take a table for 2. And immediately, Clownhunter's parents are like, oh crap. And like Clownhunter, like Bao goes to reach for a knife. Now, it's kind of one of these funny things because his dad steps in and says, no, we don't escalate things, right? This is the Joker we're talking about. Now, this is the kind of fear that the Joker has on the city of Gotham, not because of the fact that he's so incredibly violent, that is part of the fear factor, but because of the fact that he's so unpredictable. You don't know if he's going to just kind of leave, like if the Joker would just leave here and then go back and do his thing, or if the Joker would massacre everybody in this place, right? There's no way of knowing what the Joker's going to do because the Joker's schemes don't make sense to anybody but himself. And so because of that, you end up having Bao, who's basically told to kind of back off. And then of course, Joker and Harley Quinn are eating their meal and that kind of a thing. And so Harley's like, you know what? We should get out of here. We should go fence these things, that kind of stuff. And the Joker's like, that sounds good, right? Like go grab the car and take the kids. But where Harley Quinn ends up leaving, the Joker still stays behind. And this is a very daunting situation because now it's one of these things where it's almost kind of like, okay, now it's just the 2 of us, and it's a little creepy, right? Because this is usually where the Joker ends up just kind of being insane. And so ultimately he's told by the father of Bao, look, the meal's on the house, man, right? Like we're really glad that you enjoyed it, and make sure you get home safely. And the Joker's like, okay, like, you know, I really need to give you guys a big tip. So here's a tip that I'm giving you. Don't breathe, and like sprays him down with the Joker toxin. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I kind of laughed. when I was initially reading this, I was like, I mean, I know it's not funny, but it was kind of funny a little bit, and I was like, man, this is messed up. But ultimately, of course, it ends up exposing Bao and Bao's mother and father to the toxin, and that's how they're killed. Now, this is why he associates Harley Quinn with that, because Harley Quinn was part of the duo of the Joker, right? She was part of the 1-2 punch, that where Harley Quinn went, the Joker went, right? It's just kind of the nature of these things. And so because of that, you know, Harley Quinn is every bit as complicit in the Joker in this, because Harley Quinn knew what the Joker was going to do, right? Well, she knew there was a high likelihood that he would kill them, that the Joker's insanity would lead him to do something bonkers, right? So she's just as guilty as the Joker is, right? Because she just kind of enabled it and allowed it to happen. Now, when their bodies are being carried out, this is when Commissioner Gordon kind of steps up and says, there's somebody who wants to talk to you. And that's when Bao comes face to face with Batman for the very first time. And as the two of them are talking, there's a lot of anger inside Bao, right? He just lost his parents. There's a lot of anger, a lot of emotion, and a lot of desire for vengeance. And he asks Batman to make a promise, right? Batman gives him a batarang, and Bao says, make a promise. Promise me you're going to do something about this. Right now, as we know with Batman, he never really does anything about the Joker, right? So this was really a promise that Batman had no intention of keeping. And so because of that, it basically leads to us kind of jumping back to this moment right now where you have Leslie talking directly with Bao himself. And it's one of these things where it's a really interesting conversation here, because he kind of asks her, you know, like, why are you helping me out here, right? I could be some kind of creepy weirdo killer. She's like, I know that's what you are, right? I know you're the Clown Hunter. I've heard of the Clown Hunter of the Narrows. You know, I know you're one going around and killing everybody who wore a clown mask during the Joker War, who committed all these heinous acts. I know you're the person who's doing that. The question I have is, why did you come to me? And the funny thing is, again, he's having a bit of an existential crisis, that he found Harley Quinn, that he got a hold of Harley Quinn. He had the opportunity to kill Harley Quinn, and he didn't. And so now he doesn't know what he's supposed to do, right? If his sole purpose for the last, you know, however long was to basically track down and kill clowns everywhere he found them, and then he let one go, now he's made an exception to the rule. And because he lived his life, but, you know, being defined by this rule, or at least lived, you know, a portion of his life being defined by this rule, when you make an exception to the rule you live by, then of what value is the rule that you follow? And that's the situation that he's in here. That's what he's trying to figure out, because now he's in that situation where it comes to the line drawing, right? That's the problem with making exceptions to the rules, is where do you draw the line? Suddenly it shifts and changes all the time. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, depending on what rule we're talking about. It's reasonable to have a hard and fast line on like killing people, right? But like, you know, running a yellow light, no cop's really gonna pull you over for that, right? Running a red light, yeah. But like, or going like 10 miles over the speed limit on the interstate, right? There's these kind of hard and fast rules, right? Officially, the speed limit's 75. Unofficially, it's like 85 or 90, possibly, if there's not really a cop that, you know, not really a cop around you. Sometimes even 100 or 110 or 115, you know, if you're hanging out with Benny and driving his Dodge Challenger, which is really cool. You know, it depends on the situation, right? It depends on what's going on. You know, it depends on the rules. But nonetheless, you know, it's one of these things where in his mind, he almost kind of defines his existence in terms of video game logic. Right now, before all the gamers start coming out and, oh, see, people are saying video games are violent. That's not what they're saying here, right? And you know better than that. The point that he's making here is that in video games, there is a direct reward system for what you do, right? As video games are predicated on some kind of a point-based system. Maybe not so far as a direct point-based system, but like a point-based system nonetheless, right? XP, leveling up, different things like that. And so because of that, you commit an act, you're rewarded for that act, right? Now your reward may be something that you don't like. You may be rewarded with a punishment, but you're rewarded nonetheless, right? And so because of that, he's kind of lived under the purview of his parents, right? Do what I tell you to do, and you will get a positive reward. Do what I told you not to do, and you'll get a bad reward. You take that, you combine it with the reward-based system of video games, and all he's really known his whole life is that if you do good things happen to you. If you do bad things happen to you. And the reality is, the world doesn't work that way. That good things happen to bad people, that bad things happen to good people, and everywhere in between, right? A person who's done nothing but act like a dick to people his entire life wins the lottery. And a person who's been the nicest guy in the world just always ends up coming up last, right? Sometimes that's just the way that it works, right? Not everybody gets their just desserts. And walking around the world with the philosophy of everything good happens to good people, everything bad happens to bad people is a recipe for disaster. In this situation, something terrible terrible happened to Bao's parents and they never did anything bad. It flew in the face of everything he knew. And what he desires is for sanity to return to the world, because his world has completely gone topsy-turvy. It's turned upside down. Now, this became evident in the fact that as, in the aftermath of meeting with Batman, that he constantly recollected this promise that Batman made to him. I promise you, I will stop this. I promise you, I will do something about the Joker. But every single time he turned on the TV or he saw the news or whatever it was, and there was another escape by Joker from Arkham Asylum and Joker going on another killing spree and killing more people and Batman putting Joker back in Arkham Asylum and then Joker escaping again, it was one of these things where it was constantly a case of Batman just never really doing anything to stop the Joker. Then he started to lose faith, right? He started to lose belief in the fact that Joker would actually do the right thing. And so it's one of these really, really cool discussions that kind of takes place between Leslie and Bao, where he brings up this statement. He says, there are things out there in the world that need to be done in life. And that's what I don't get. There's so much out there that so obviously needs to get done, but nobody's doing anything. If I don't do this, who's going to stop them? All the people who took off their masks and went back to their lives. And the response of Leslie is, why do they need to be stopped? Maybe they had a change of heart. Notice the two completely differing opinions here. Leslie is of an opinion, well, everybody should be forgiven for the things that they've done. Maybe they changed their mind. Maybe they realized that they made a mistake. Maybe they were somebody who was in a rough situation and it was their only real outlet, whatever it is. It is an entire philosophy based on excusing people of their actions. But the stance of Bao is, no, we don't excuse them for what they did. They did a terrible thing. They need to pay the price for what they've done. That any possibility of receiving redemption went out the window when they committed such heinous acts. And this wasn't a situation of people who were going through and just like robbing banks or anything like that. In his mind, when he goes through and he specifically targets these clowns, it's because of the things that they did. That he kind of tells Leslie, that the breaking straw for him was during the Joker War himself. That when he was going through, when he was in his place and the whole thing started to pop off and all these criminals started donning clown masks and rallying themselves under the ideology of the Joker, that they were doing things like burning people alive. They were beating people to death, right? They were satisfying every despicable desire they had in their minds and their bodies. And at that point in time, the way that Bao saw it, they were broken and they were beyond any real hope for redemption. That any chance they had of being able to say, hey, look, I'm sorry for my actions and I want to repent, that's gone, right? That's basically gone, right? It's one of these things, what is it? Geneva Conventions, the Nuremberg trials, saying I was just following orders is not good enough anymore. And that's what makes Clownhunter so interesting, because Clownhunter is kind of the answer to the question, what happens when a person doesn't believe the lies of Batman anymore when Batman says, I promise I'll do something about the Joker, right? What happens when somebody wakes up and says, every time Batman says this, nothing ever gets done. Ergo, Batman can't be trusted to keep his promise in dealing with the Joker, right? What happens when somebody gets to that point? The point that you get is Clownhunter, because what ends up happening is there's a woman by the name of Mrs. Nugent who was set on fire by one of these guys in clown masks. And in that moment, he snaps, right? He has this recollection back to a statement that his mom had made to him, your father needs help, I need help, don't lose yourself in a fake world. We need you here in the real world doing real things. And that's when he kind of starts to realize the fake world is the world where Batman will save us. The fake world is the world where we have to rely on Batman to make Gotham a better place. Because the reality is, if Batman was going to make Gotham a better place, he would have, but he hasn't. And therefore, Batman cannot be believed or trusted. And so it's one of these things where he basically says, fine, if Batman's going to be a half measure, then I will be a full measure. And that's when he basically ends up taking the Batarang, he puts it into the bat, he basically makes it, he literally uses the bottom of a broom and just like attaches, all the little straws to his hat. He paints it and he goes forward as Clownhunter, grabs, takes the baseball bat, beats the crap out of one of the clowns, and then sets him on fire. And it's just kind of like, this is the end, right? Where a whole bunch of other clowns come after him, he in turn kills all of them as well. And notice something, he did something here that Batman has never been able to do throughout the entirety of Gotham City. Clownhunter made these guys afraid to come to his neighborhood. People are not afraid of committing crimes in Gotham because they're not afraid of Batman. We know that because people commit crimes in Gotham. But in terms of what's going on in Crime Alley, or at least in the Narrows, Clownhunter, all these guys afraid to come to his neighborhood, they never came back. Once he went on that warpath and killed every clown he found, they wouldn't come back. And the reason why is because unlike Batman, where all the most they have to be worried about is handed over to the justice system, which is probably ill-equipped to handle them, and then they're thrown in jail, then like they escape or something like that. With Clownhunter, they have to worry about living, that he introduced a level of consequence that they simply just weren't willing to accept. And that's the nature of things. That's the huge thing. That's the big difference here. That with somebody like Leslie Tompkins, she's avidly against the idea of using violence, right? She says violence never solves anything. That's not not true. Violence solves lots of things, right? Violence is not always the answer, but it is a answer, and it's a very effective answer. Problem with violence is it makes people uncomfortable, and it disrupts the status quo. It kind of flies in the face of the comfortable life they live, and it asks them to make sacrifices that they're just not willing to make, right? So people want things to change, they just don't want to have to do anything that actually requires change. But Clownhunter stepped in and said, no, things need to change. If people aren't willing to do what needs to be done to at least make my neighborhood safer, then the hell with it. I'll do it on my own. And that's exactly how he became the character that he became, right? That's one of the interesting things here, is because violence, again, it introduces a kind of, it does create more violence. That's true. But sometimes that's just the price you pay. And ultimately, you kind of have to end up becoming that kind of a person. That you have to become a kind of person where you look at a circumstance and say, okay, I'm facing off against a situation where the people involved just cannot be fixed. They cannot be redeemed. There's no way to save them. They're just too far gone. And no matter what I do or what I try or how hard I work, there's no way to bring them back. And so the only way to make the world better is to get rid of them. It's the only way. And it's not one of these lines of logic that you use as a one-off, right? Like, that guy robbed a bank, kill him. That's not what you do, right? It's one of these things where it's like, okay, why is this guy robbing a bank? Is this guy robbing a bank because he's in a really, really bad situation? If he is, then how do we find a way to resolve that situation, right? Is he down on his luck? Is he out of a job? Is there something I can do to help him get back on his feet to get a job? There's all kinds of situations out there where you can use nonviolence as a means to improve people's lives. But the ability to use nonviolence to improve a person's life stops once they demonstrate incorrigibility, the inability and the refusal to stop doing what they're doing and to literally keep becoming more violent. The issue that you run into when you use that is you kind of create your standard in terms of at what point does somebody come for you, right? So if Clownhunter is one of these guys where he's like, I'm going to kill every single clown out there, every single clown that was there during the Joker War, I'm going to kill them. And then once they're all dead, then what do? Well, at that point, then it's like, okay, like you've served your mission. And that's why if you're going to use violence as a means to achieve an end, you have to have a clearly defined plan for why you're using that violence and what your end goal is. And it cannot be an open end goal, right? You can't be like Batman and just say, I want to make sure nobody experiences the pain that I experienced when I was a little kid. Okay, that's way too open-ended. What Clownhunter has done here has actually been to create a kind of defined purpose for what he's doing, right? Like all these people who dress up as clowns and attacked in the Narrows and bent to their most baseline desires, these are people that I'm going to kill. Because it's not as though, you know, the whole event of the Joker War turned them into something they were not. The truth is, they were always that person. They were always that kind of person. They were just looking for a reason to give them an excuse to allow that version of themselves out. And so at that point, all you're doing is just sparing the world the existence of what is already a terrible human being. And the terrible nature of that human being is not arbitrarily defined by Clownhunter, it's defined by the actions of that human being. And so again, it's one of these things where it makes clear and rational sense. And that's why I say like Clownhunter is a full measure, because he has a clearly defined idea on who he's going to kill and why he's going to do it, what the motivation is, and why they deserve to die. And the reason why is because they're terrible people who did terrible things and showed a callous disregard for everybody else's life, for the life of innocent people. And that again is a big difference, right? That's a huge difference, going after an innocent person versus a guilty person. And that's why like the world needs more clown hunters. Like, I mean, crime will never go away 100%, but it can go away by a lot, right? I mean, it can go away by quite a bit, right? Because dead men cannot be repeat offenders. But the funny thing about this is that there's this kind of discussion where Clownhunter shows this kind of resolve, this kind of initiative, right? This ability to basically say like, you know, I have the wherewithal and the capability to make Gotham a better place, to basically finish the job that Batman never finishes. And what's the response he's given to by Leslie Tompkins? Come to my anger management course, right? Like, yes, you have this incredible passion, you have the ability to make Gotham better, and yes, there are some people out there who just genuinely need to die, but we don't want you doing that, right? Like, come to my anger management course, you know, and it's kind of crazy because he even goes as far as to ask her, would you let the Joker live? And she's like, yes, I would let the Joker live. I would, because deep down there's still humanity, there's something down there that can be saved, but he can't, right? The Joker cannot be saved. There's no making him better. There's no getting him to a place where he wakes up one day and says, my God, what have I been doing all this time, man? I've just been killing people, man. I'm sure glad Batman threw me into Arkham. If he hadn't done it for the 100th time, I never would have learned my lesson, right? It's never gonna happen, right? That's never gonna happen. So again, I champion the ideology of Clownhunter and I champion the character. It kind of sucks that she's asked him to join an anger management course, right? Like, you have the ability to change Gotham City, so we're gonna try to stop you from doing that. You know, it's kind of wild, but it is an amazing origin. I'll go as far as to say that I think the origin of Clownhunter is probably one of the best origins I've read in a long, long time. It's absolutely amazing. But with that being said, guys, we're we're gonna bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoy this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.